Mr. President, I have already cast my no vote with regard to the judge and will so again whenever we get to final passage. But I want to take this opportunity to talk about the chaos that is going on in Venezuela. If it wasn't enough chaos, last week, Venezuela's Supreme Court stripped its legislative branch of its powers, just stripped them of powers. And only because the court had gotten such significant criticism did it reverse its decision. Apparently, even the very shaky president of Venezuela, Maduro, even weighed in to get them to reverse their decision. Now, isn't this something? This is supposed to be a democracy, and yet it's being run as a dictatorship, where even the judicial branch goes and does something crazy, and the president of the country gets up and tells them, you better reverse yourself, there's too much criticism. This is the nonsense that is going on in Venezuela. And of course, what went on last week further undermines Venezuela's so-called democracy, and it's only the latest in President Maduro's creeping dictatorship. And that's what it is, because he has repeatedly and violently suppressed protesters and jailed his political opponents in violation of any understanding of human rights. And he's used that same Supreme Court to block members of the National Assembly from taking office, and he has used that Supreme Court as a rubber stamp to overturn the laws that the National Assembly does that he doesn't like. Isn't it a sad state that Venezuela has reached? The president has also thwarted opposition efforts to recall him, President Maduro, in a national referendum. And in so doing, he was able to appoint a vice president with ties to Hezbollah, and now a vice president that it appears that he has sanctioned drug trafficking. Meanwhile, the poor Venezuelan people suffer the consequences of the political, the humanitarian, and the economic crisis. Venezuelans are dying because of severe shortages of food and medicine and other products. The economy is in free fall, and crime and corruption are rampant. And last year, 18,000 Venezuelans sought asylum in the U.S., more than any other nationality. Well, the United States stands clearly on the side of the Venezuelan people in calling on President Maduro to cease undermining democracy, release all political prisoners, respect the rule of law, and respect human rights. There obviously is no sign that he is going to be doing this. So what should we do? Well, first of all, we ought to get our Secretary of State to work with the international community, including the Organization of American States, to help resolve this crisis and alleviate the suffering for the Venezuelan people. That's the first order of business, to try to eliminate the suffering of people. And it's all so true. Whenever a dictator takes control, as has happened in Venezuela, it's the people that suffer first. Additionally, I'm suggesting and I'm calling on the administration to fully enforce and where appropriate, expand the sanctions on those responsible for continued violence and human rights violations that are perpetrated against the people. It's very interesting. A lot of these so-called big guys in Venezuela, they love to travel. They love to have bank accounts. They love to come to Miami. They love to have U.S. bank accounts. Let's slap some severe economic sanctions on these guys. The situation is increasingly dire, and we must stand with the Venezuelan people in their struggle for democracy and human rights. Mr. President, I yield the floor.